Hello and welcome to Archfelder's Hacks with Archfelder and his amazing hacks. Question that comes up quite a lot whenever I upload something is, can I get banned for doing this? And indeed this comes up so often that I thought I'd make a video addressing that specific point. The answer to the question is, surprisingly, usually no. However, some exploits have a very high risk of a ban associated with them, and you have to take every case very much on its merits. It is important to consider the type of ban also, because a 3-hour ban has purely symbolic importance, whereas a permanent ban can remove months or years of character development. Generally speaking, most people who use exploits don't get banned, and when they do, they generally receive temporary rather than permanent bans. This is worth bearing in mind when you get individuals very excitedly yelling about how you're going to get banned for doing something. Generally speaking, it is just not true. It's more to do, I think, with the power fantasies of that type of person. You know, this idea that they can invoke the wrath of an angry god or a mafia boss to wreak retribution on you for annoying them in some way. To give you an example, I've had an account for many years. I started exploiting seriously in Cataclysm. I did a bit of exploration stuff in Burning Crusade, but nothing that would have caused any kind of problems. I've done pretty much every exploit you can imagine. Also, I make exploit videos, and unlike everybody else in the exploit community, I make no attempt to hide my toon's identity. I simply don't care about a ban that much. To me, that would mean I would stop paying Blizzard money, and more importantly, losing a lot of productivity, and I could do many other things with that time. So in many ways that would be the best possible outcome for me. To some extent, this whole channel was really set up as a perverse exercise in getting permanently banned, and one that's so far been completely unsuccessful. Right at this moment I have received 3 bans. 1 for 3 hours back in Mr. Pandaria, and 2 for 72 hours in Warlords of Draenor. I am on notice as being on a final ban, and I'm expecting my account to be closed eventually, maybe this year or at the start of next year. I half expect it every time I log in. Traditionally, Blizzard have used this 4-stage escalating series of suspensions. Since Legion, the system seems to have been overhauled in favour of a more cost-effective automated user report system, so it is unclear whether the procedure is the same. For example, those of you who watch my videos closely will notice I mentioned that exploiting in PvP, going outside the forbidden zones of battlegrounds, was something that you could no longer get away with because there was some kind of auto-reporting system every time you transcended the boundaries of a battleground. And while I believe that information was accurate at the time I made that statement, it no longer seems to be the case. I've been outside the boundaries of battlegrounds since, not for any real game advantages, just purely for research purposes, and that has not triggered any further activity or action. Now, it is important to understand that my experience isn't that typical. Most other exploiters have reported permanent bans, at least exploiters who are as prolific as I am, sometimes for single offences. It is very much the type of exploit that makes the difference. What type of things trigger perma bans? Most importantly, anything that will cause the game to crash. This can be achieved by a number of methods, which I'm not going to explain in great detail because I don't encourage people to do it. But essentially anything which creates a massive amount of game lag will do it. In this case, you are directly attacking Blizzard by preventing people from using their products. This is identical for all practical purposes to a localized DDoS attack, and for this reason Blizzard can't afford to ignore it. Some streamers, when organising events in-game for their fans, have inadvertently received bans simply because they brought too many players to one location and put an enormous strain on the Realm server. In every case, the streamer was obviously entirely innocent and unaware of the problem they were creating, but they still received a ban, which gives you an indication of how seriously the Blizzard took the problem. The second and more common type of exploit that results in permanent bans is manipulating the WoW economy. The classic example of this is duping, which is the practice of creating multiple versions of the same item by exploiting some sort of glitch. If you do find a way of creating multiple spectral tigers or some other high-priced item and you flood the auction house with them, expect to get a permaban. This type of activity tends to cause havoc with the stability of the economy by devaluing the price of the duped item, and for this reason Blizzard have little patience with it. Third, and I can't stress this one enough, is that anything which pisses off very large numbers of people is going to create large numbers of reports. It has historically taken a really large volume of reports to trigger a ban, but it is possible if you show off an exploit in front of a crowd. I do a lot of PvP exploits, and this is an issue. It is noticeable that when I use exploits other people are using, they often get banned, whereas I generally don't. The difference is down to the fact that I rarely rub people's noses in it. If you camp a graveyard for 15 minutes with some kind of damage exploit, expect some trouble. Focus on the game objectives, stay under the radar, avoid dramatic visual displays, don't draw attention to yourself, and you are much more likely to be okay. And this is at least partly because, ultimately, it doesn't matter if you use an exploit, but no one's experience is ruined. That ultimately is what it comes down to. The truth is that for someone to get banned, they have to be detected doing that thing. And despite advances in computing technology, a human being is still the best way by far to detect any kind of exploit. So if you remove the human equation, then Blizzard can't realistically police everything with their own stuff. The economics of it simply wouldn't add up. And for that reason, they'd have to use some kind of automated program, and undoubtedly they do. Apart from the employees themselves, we can't know what methods Blizzard actually uses, and I would imagine they keep those methods secret. But we can hazard some reasonably accurate guesses as to what they might do. First, they probably have a range of metrics and look for any spikes that look out of place in normal activity. For example, they might have some program to detect unusual volumes of high-priced items on the auction house. They might look for massive gains in a player's gold supply. Normally there is a practical limit on how much these things fluctuate, so any statistically significant aberration suggests some kind of exploit. For this reason, one of the ways to protect yourself from detection is to ask yourself, could the exploit I am using be considered abnormal? If you find a way to dupe spectral tigers, for example, and you make a weekly 100,000 gold profit, is that going to draw attention? Probably not. There are people who are serious gold farmers who make that type of money, but 500,000 every day for a month might. As a general rule, you want to be halfway between a completely normal profile and one that is using an exploit with no restrictions, but it does depend greatly on the situation. If you're interested in learning how to avoid detection in World of Warcraft to an advanced level, or indeed avoid detection in any activity that the general public or corporations consider subversive, and you are very motivated and intelligent, I would consider looking at the academic discipline of game theory and the investment concept optimal geometric growth portfolio. Those concepts really form the foundation of a lot of what I do. So there's the video. I hope this answered any questions on the subject you might have. And please remember to subscribe. I'm working on 4 different major exploits at the moment, which I think you're going to love and you won't want to miss out on. Thank you for watching. This has been Archvalder.